Lesson 51, Noun Gender. The Russian language is like many other languages in the sense that each Russian noun has its own gender classification. In Russian, a noun can be classified as masculine, feminine, or neuter, and as you go along and learn the various nouns, you have to remember what gender each noun is. Now, this is different than the way we do it in English. In English, the word car does not have a gender. It's not considered to be masculine or feminine or neuter. The word tree is not masculine, feminine, or neuter. But other languages like Spanish, German, French, Italian, and also Russian, for those languages, the nouns have gender. And not just nouns that pertain to people or animals, nouns for everyday objects. As we say here in the book, boats, tables, mountains. Every noun has some kind of gender, and it's going to be one of the three genders, masculine, feminine, or neuter. And in language study, there are two kinds of gender to know about. There's what we call natural gender and then grammatical gender. Natural gender has to do with biological sex. Is a person, male or female? Is an animal, like for example, if you have a horse, is it a stallion or a mare? Is it, a male horse or a female horse? So that's natural gender. But then there's grammatical gender, which means that a noun is just classified as having a certain gender just because the word fits that kind of spelling or that kind of classification grammatically as far as the different forms it can take. Russian is in the same language family as Latin and Greek, and so it has something in common with those languages. All three of those languages have basically three declensions. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but all three of those languages, we have what we call the first declension, which is mainly nouns that are feminine as far as their grammatical gender, and they tend to end with the letter A. Sometimes in grammar books, you'll see it called the A declension. Then we have a declension that we call the second declension, which typically is masculine and neuter nouns. And then there's a third declension, which has a little bit of everything. And the reason that Russian, Latin, and Greek have all those similarities is because they all come from a parent language called Indo-European. So all those languages are cousins, and they have a lot of structural similarities. A noun in Russian is going to fall into one of those three broad categories. It's going to be in the first declension, which is mainly feminine nouns, the second declension, which is mainly masculine or neuter, and then the third declension, which is a little bit of everything. In this particular book, we're just covering the first declension in Russian, and that's why we're learning so many feminine nouns in this book. But again, this classification is generally a classification that pertains to just the words themselves, not biological or natural gender. That having been said, natural gender does come into the picture because, as we say here in the book, words that pertain to women, like mother, sister, grandmother, those are all grammatically feminine, and they are feminine according to natural gender. Likewise, words for brother, father, grandfather, those nouns are grammatically masculine and masculine according to natural gender. So there is some overlap when it comes to nouns. There is some overlap between grammatical gender and natural gender. They're not completely separate. However, for the most part, just dealing with nouns for everyday objects, there's no rhyme or reason to why a particular noun is in a certain classification. So when it comes to everyday objects like a desk or a telephone or a car or a tree, you just have to remember what declension and what gender that particular noun has so that you can know how to add the different endings to it. And we're going to cover that in the next few lessons. We're going to learn all the different endings that a noun can have. Again, in this book, we're only going to be working with the first declension. That's to make it easier for you to learn, so you can just focus on one set of noun endings. But as you progress beyond this book, keep in mind that you'll have to remember what gender each Russian noun is.